Okay, good morning, everyone. Welcome to post-cabinet media availability. Joining us today is Premier Houston. Premier, do you have opening remarks before we start?
No, I'm good.
Okay, we'll go right into questions.
Premier, I might ask you off the top. Yesterday, BC was given a dispensation to look at decriminalizing a small amount of drugs to help deal with the opioid crisis. Number one, what do you think of that kind of an approach? Number two, is it something that we are considering or would consider?
Yeah, here in this province, I mean, we're very focused on supporting those with addictions and needs, and we also have the Office of Addictions and Mental Health, so it's certainly a main focus of ours to support those Nova Scotians that need it. But the approach that BC has taken, I mean, we'll watch and see how that unfolds in that province, but it's not something that we're considering right now.
Why not, Premier?
Well, we have the Office of Addictions and Mental Health. We're looking at the programs we have to support Nova Scotians, and you know, this is not something that's on the radar.
Is it that our problem isn't as serious, or?
Well, certainly different provinces, you know, have different issues, even within a province. In different communities, there's different, you know, different degrees of the issue. So we'll work with Minister Comer and Addictions and Mental Health to make sure that we have appropriate programs there. But you know, the step that BC has taken, we'll watch and see how that the impact that has in their province. But it's just not something that's on our radar.
So would you be open-minded to such a thing based on, if you're watching what BC does based on their results? Is it something that you would likely consider if it was a positive development?
What I'd say is we're not considering it right now.
Premier, most other provinces have offered some forms of inflation relief well above and beyond what Nova Scotia announced back in March. I'm just wondering, I'm going to ask Minister McMaster about this later, but he's been saying that there's, you know, the government is considering additional measures. Where are you with that?
Yeah, so there's no question with you know, gas prices, affordability in general. It's having a huge impact on Nova Scotians. Nova Scotians are struggling, and certainly, you know, looking at people like those working the VON, trucking. This has a very price of fuel in particular has a very direct impact on them, and people are struggling. We've taken steps. You know, we're looking at affordability across the board. Look what we're doing in housing. Yesterday we announced more spots in daycares. You know, we'll continue to look at opportunities to support Nova Scotians. We're talking to reaching out to the federal government. We're talking to our colleagues in premiers across the country to see what's possible, looking at what they're doing. But we have to realize that, you know, that there's a lot to balance here. So taking a short-term measure, we need to make sure that any measure we take is sustainable. So taking a short-term measure that could potentially have long-term ramifications which are negative on the ability to deliver services in healthcare, in education, in addiction support. You know, we have to make sure we have a long-term view here. But we know that the Nova Scotians are struggling, and we'll continue to have discussions about what is possible, and when we see something that is sustainable and will have a meaningful impact, we'll certainly take that step. But today, we're also mindful of the long term.
Premier, you and the Finance Minister have been saying for weeks now that you guys are having discussions, you're looking at options. Nova Scotia is now the only province in Atlantic Canada that hasn't offered any kind of targeted supports amid inflation. You know, are we going to see anything tangible in the near future?
I disagree that we haven't done anything. We did $13 million of supports for Nova Scotians, and I think every province. Inflation is a worldwide situation. It's not unique to Nova Scotia. It's not unique to Canada. You would be very hard pressed to find any town, village, community in the world that's not experiencing record gas prices right now in particular. So if you look at the price of fuel across Atlantic Canada and across the country, I think you'd see Nova Scotians is towards the bottom. We have some of the lowest gas prices. So when you talk about gas price relief in particular, it's very high for Nova Scotians. It's having a very, you know, people, it's having a big negative impact on people for sure. But let's put these things into perspective. It would be, I would completely disagree that we've done nothing. We will continue to look at opportunities that are meaningful, that are sustainable, and won't have a negative long-term impact on our ability as a province to deliver services. That's not to say that we're ignoring it at all. We're not. We've taken some steps. We're always open to more steps, but there's a lot of things we have to balance.
But just to be clear, because when I talked to your Minister Finance 3 weeks to a month ago, he said there was something in the works. Is that still in the works, or is that off the table?
I think we're always, we're reaching out to the federal government, reaching out to neighboring provinces, understanding what they're doing, seeing what's possible, what might work here. So, I mean, this is a situation that we know could be long term. Inflation could continue to increase. Gas prices could continue to be volatile, particularly to the upside. So we need to be mindful of that and prepared for that moving forward. So it would be fair to say, I don't think anyone would be able to say that we're adverse to taking steps when the time comes. I think our track record shows that we act very quickly when we see opportunities. You can see that with our response to CCAs and a whole multitude of issues that we've done as a government. So. Are we looking and listening? Of course, we're always looking and listening. And when we see that opportunity that can have a meaningful, positive impact on Nova Scotians, of course, we will take it.
So what more do you need to see to be able to kind of tip over to, yes, we're going to do something more than we've already done?
Well, we need to see something that can have a meaningful impact that's sustainable. In the long term, we're very focused, of course, on healthcare and delivering services to Nova Scotians. So, we have a $500 million deficit. We're investing in Nova Scotians. So we need to recognize that we're doing a lot to support Nova Scotians. There's always more we want to do, but we'll continue to look for opportunities that can have that meaningful impact that's sustainable.
On a completely different topic, I wondered what you make of NSP's desire to shield from the public information such as bonuses, lobbying activity, and executive compensation.
Well, I disagree with it. I believe it should be disclosed, and the province has made a filing with the UARB and for the review rate increase review that's happening right now, and in there we state specifically too that it should be disclosed. So I personally believe it should be disclosed.
What do you think of their arguments that this is proprietary information?
I disagree with them.
Premier, it came out in Ottawa yesterday that Irving Shipbuilding has gone to the federal government to ask for more money to expand the Irving shipyard in order to actually work on the Navy contract for the new fleet of ships. Has the province been approached by Irving Shipbuilding as well?
Not to my knowledge, but what I would say is I was at the shipyards on the weekend for the naming of 2 vessels, and I think it's what's happening there with the building of those vessels is something that Nova Scotians should be proud of. It's part of our shipbuilding tradition in this province. They're building up high quality vessels there that will. Will protect our country, but keep those serving on those vessels safe. So we should be proud of the work that's happening there. And of course, we have, we want to support them with access to workers. That's why we have our trades, our Young Trades Initiative for people under the age of 30 with no personal provincial income tax on their first $50,000. So we need young tradespeople here. We need opportunities for them here in this province. Shipbuilding is an incredible opportunity. There are lots of other opportunities. So I'm a big fan of the shipbuilding that's happening in this province, and I'll certainly look for ways to support it.
But specifically, if they came to you with an ask to help them expand their plan, would the province be open to that, given the fact that we had an NDP government that took a crap load of, for lack of a better term, flack during an election campaign over providing the initial money to get that place up and running?
Is that a technical analysis of what?
Pretty much, yeah.
Listen, as Premier, there's lots of proposals and lots of submissions that come to the government. It wouldn't be appropriate to comment on a hypothetical situation, but what I would say is when we look at economic growth, when we look at opportunities for this province to create opportunities for Nova Scotians to work in this province, I'll have those discussions any day of the week.
Premier, it's been a couple months now since the Supreme Court ruled that the way that the previous government set judges' pay was unconstitutional. You've had some time as a government to sort of roll this around. I'm wondering what's going to happen next. Is the government going to rectify this in some way?
Well, we've received the decision. We're conscious of the decision. We will not be appealing the decision.
So, are you going to increase their pay?
We'll be respecting the advice of the courts on that one.
Right, but the advice didn't specifically say what to do about it. It said that that was unconstitutional. Are judges going to get a pay increase in the near term, or is that going to be in the next cycle that you're going to make them whole?
Yeah, I think what I'd say is, again, we're going to respect the advice of the courts. We won't be appealing the decision. We'll be moving forward.
Right, but there's a missing piece here, Premier. I'm just wondering if you could sort of clarify, does that mean that judges will be getting a raise?
I think that's what the decision of the courts was. We'll be respecting the decision of the courts.
On the nurses front, you announced that you had 350 of them have accepted jobs with the province. You had originally offered jobs to the whole graduating class. That works out, I think, to be about half the class of. Is that what you expected? And when do these nurses go to work?
Yeah, so of course access to healthcare is a big focus of Nova Scotians, and therefore a big focus of our government. So that includes doctors, nurses, our healthcare professionals across the spectrum. So we're excited about the uptake from nurses studying in this province. That's a good thing. There are lots of vacancies to be filled, and we'll continue to look for ways to fill those vacancies and support those working in healthcare in this province to make sure Nova Scotians have access. So we're excited that there's a big number of people who have said already that they want to work in healthcare in this province. That's a good thing.
Any idea why the other half would have said no thanks?
I don't know that they have said no thanks. They might not have just said yes yet.
Let's move over to the phones for a minute. Let's go to Stuart Peddle with the Chronicle Herald. Stuart, do you have a question? Stuart, are you there?
Yeah, sorry, I forgot to turn off the mute.
All good.
So just following up on the NSP thing, you say you disagree with their position. Is there any action you can actually take to rectify that situation?
Well, it's before there's a formal process before the UARB, so that we've made a submission as a province. That submission stated that the executive compensation is something we should be disclosed. I personally feel it should be disclosed, but we respect the process of the UARB.
Stuart, do you have a follow-up question?
No, I think that other questions have been answered already.
Perfect. Let's go to Jennifer Henderson with the Halifax Examiner. Go ahead, Jennifer.
Good morning, Premier. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Oh, great. Okay. I want to follow up on Stuart's question. I'd like to know what the province's position is before the UARB with respect to the proposed increase. That's the 10% increase that the power company is looking for over the next 2 or 3 years. What is Nova Scotia's position on that point, the size of the rate request?
Yeah, the position on that point and all others related to affordability and in this case the cost of energy is our primary obligation is to protect the ratepayers of this province, and that's what we will do at every opportunity.
Jennifer, do you have a follow-up question?
I don't think that answered my question, actually. I asked what your position was with respect to a 10% rate hike over 3 years.
And the position is that we're going to do everything we can to protect the ratepayers of this province. So the UARB has a process. We filed a submission in there. I believe in that submission you'd find consistency with what I just said, which was that we are concerned about the ratepayers of this province. That's our only concern.
Okay, and those are all the questions we have on the phone. Are there any other questions in the room?
Premier, on the Mass Casualty Commission, there have been 2 officers that testified under embargo. What's your feeling about the way this has turned and the answers that the families are getting?
Yeah, so I mean, look, it's I stand with the families. I always have on this, including way back in the early days, to make sure that there was a full inquiry on this. So the families have a significant concerns about how this is unfolding. and I share those concerns. So we need to make sure that the inquiry gets to a place where people can feel confident in the findings and respect the findings, and have an action plan to move forward. So look, I'm just as concerned about what's happening as everyone is there.
Is there any action you can do at this point then to get to that stage?
Like it's an independent commission, right? So I've made my feelings made publicly at the beginning on some of the thoughts I had. The federal government is a partner in this as well, so we'll talk to them. But what I would say is I have concerns with how this is playing out, and I know those concerns. I share them with the families in Nova Scotians.
Do you think something's lost when there's no cross-examination?
Yeah.
Is this what you expected when you stood and your caucus stood with the families and demanded that there be an inquiry rather than a review?
I think the concerns that people have raised, about particularly around cross-examination and the ability to ask questions in your own words in the moment to get to answers and information, I think that's really important, and I think that was certainly something that I expected would happen way back when we were calling for an inquiry.
Do you have confidence in this process at this point?
Well, look, there's concerns with how it's playing out. It's not over yet, so I want to be respectful of the fact that it's still ongoing, and I think that we've seen some course adjustments by the commission during the course of the inquiry to this stage. So I'm hopeful that they're listening.
Premier, how would you characterize where we are with COVID in the province at this point?
Just the pandemic, moving through stages of the pandemic. There's still COVID active in our communities. There's no question about that. People are aware of that, and I feel strongly that people have the information that they need to make their decisions to protect themselves and protect their families in terms of masking, in terms of staying away from certain events or crowds and social distancing. So, look, it's painful when you see Nova Scotians continuing to perish because of COVID. It's absolutely devastating to each and every one of us. So that weighs heavy on the mind, and it's still active in our communities. But we're moving through the pandemic, and this is a stage of the pandemic that will continue to move forward through.
Premier, I was just wondering if I could quickly ask you about MLA salaries. The Speaker named a panel this week to review salaries as required by statute. There's going to be some public consultation. I just thought I'd ask your opinion. It's been a decade since members have had a pay increase. Do you think it's appropriate for them to get one now?
No, all Nova Scotians are struggling. Every single Nova Scotian is struggling right now. So way back when when the Speaker announced that he was striking that panel, I think I was pretty clear at that time that wasn't a decision that I had input to, and it wasn't something that I personally would have done. So the Speaker did it. He struck the panel, but myself, I don't think it's the appropriate timing.
Right. Do you think there ever would be an appropriate timing?
I don't know, but I don't think it's today.
Are there any thoughts on the federal gun law, the new one?
We're all concerned about gun violence. We're seeing it play out certainly around the world, and certainly in Nova Scotia. We've had a lot of gun violence and gun tragedy happening in our province. So any steps that the federal government can take to strengthen around the border, around access to illegal guns in particular, and importation of illegal guns, I think is welcome. Any steps that the federal government can take to protect women and children, particularly in domestic situations, is welcome news. So we'll watch how it plays out, but I certainly am concerned about the amount of gun violence that we see in society.
So you support the changes being proposed?
Well, there's a whole suite of changes, and what I would say is I certainly I've been kind of focused on a lot of issues here that are provincial as opposed to federal. So what I would say is I support the initiative to strengthen, to protect citizens. As a broad statement, I support that initiative, particularly around the borders and women and children in domestic situations. So whether there's anything in the real full details of it, I can't comment. I haven't really been focused on that. But as a general principle, there's too much gun violence in our society.
That's all the time we have today.
Just on the Boa story on MLA, the review's findings are going to be binding. The only way that they're not going to happen is if the government were to introduce legislation in the fall to prevent it. Are you thinking about doing that?
I think it's at the beginning of the process, so it wouldn't be appropriate. But what I would just state it again that I personally wouldn't have initiated this process.
Okay, that's all the time we have. Thank you, Premier.
Okay, thanks everyone.